Hello everybody, Glass Half Dead here. Let's get straight into this because I've got like 20 slides to get through and they kind of do 90% of the work for me, and then at the end we'll have a little chat. Kasrkin suck. Not for the reason you think though, but let's have a little chat about how to fix them. So for those of you unaware, since the Kasrkin were, fully released, the rules for them were fully shown on Saturday. We're now on, Wednesday. And everyone has already decided that they are in contention for the worst team in the game. Sorry, the worst specialist team in the game. That people are also saying that they're the first team that has not been stronger than their compendium counterpart. In this instance, the Scions. And just a whole bunch of crazy things, really. And I wanted to look at the team and give my own share on it, my own take, my own... I don't think a hot take, but I guess other people do maybe. And I just wanted to discuss why I agree that the Kasrkin are a bad team. But we'll get into that in a moment. So the issues with the Kasrkin are, they have a 4-up ballistic skill. Whereas the Scions, the team that they are very clearly based on, have a 3-up ballistic skill. But the Kasrkin get the elite skill. The elite skill is also an issue. The Kasrkin gets 7 wounds. The Scions have 8 wounds. The Kasrkin are generic AF. For those of you unaware, with my Zoomer terminology, AF means as foretold in the prophecy. Mechanics over fluff design. This is essentially 90% of the argument that I'm going to be making during this video. How they have failed in the fluff to make the mechanics make sense. And then faction fantasy fail. Again, this is essentially just the above point, but I've made it more of a thing, I guess. A faction fantasy is just when you go to play your fantasy, your faction, you are supposed to get a certain feeling from that team. For example, if you're playing Nids with all your little gribbly things, you should just be taking models off the table 24/7. Like, that should be the majority of your turn. But you should, because you're playing that overwhelming tide. If you're playing Space Marines, you should be this unstoppable juggernaut, whatever, blah, blah, blah. This is the idea of the faction fantasy. Something that I would say, generally, Games Workshop has a pretty solid grasp on. But not always. Now, my twist to this video is that I actually don't care about how strong this team is. So I don't really care about their power level. Further to that, as I said in my opening video, and nothing has occurred to make me change my thoughts, I think their power level's just fine. I think they're going to win some tournaments if good players want to take them. I think they're going to win some stuff. That's cool. Because they have really good tac ops, actually, to be clear. In fact, their tac ops are so good, they're almost freebies. And on some of the Into the Dark maps, I mean, your secondaries are worth as much as the primaries. So you're almost guaranteed a win. Like, no, sorry, you're not guaranteed a win. But they're going to be just fine. Also, further to that, on the off chance I'm wrong and everybody else is right, that could never occur. If they're actually bad, they'll be a really easy team to fix. You'll just have to change like 1 or 2 numbers on their datasheet. So yeah, I'm really not that fussed about their power level. Their power level, not what I'm talking about. We do need to discuss 40k, however, and further to this, I don't care about their power level thing. I think a lot of people do care about their power level, or their perceived power level. 40k has the design mentality of day in the sun. So that is when a codex drops, the new codex is always the hottest thing. And a lot of people complain about that because obviously it's power creep, and then immediately your book is crap, right? Like, your book is no longer valid after 3 months because, sure enough, GW seems to release the things knowing that they're broken, and then in 3 months pulls them back in line. Okay? So that's day in the sun design. I think I've made it pretty clear with my bullet points. That sucks. We don't want it. I think a lot of people don't like that the Kasrkin have released solidly mid-tier. They're not happy about that. So hence embrace mediocrity. Yeah, the millennial way of life, am I right? Anyway, with that said, you know, I do want to just agree, just confirm, as the bullet points say there, I think that we really do have to be it's difficult to understand the difference emotionally between a team being bottom tier, broken, needs real help, and a team being in the middle somewhere. I think emotionally those two things feel quite the same because we've been trained to want our team to be the best. And it's totally fair to look at Kasrkin and say they are not going to beat, and then, you know, whatever it is these days, Pathfinders, Void Dancers, Vet Guard, In-Session Team, whatever, to say that they're not going to beat the top 4 teams out there, right? It's like, yeah, they won't. That's fine. But we need to look at those 4 teams, not Kasrkin. So, with that said, embrace the mediocrity. Now, I would like to say we're going to dive into all of these bullet points a little bit deeper, but the next slide is actually a subscriber-only slide, so if you don't want to see the next slide because you're not a subscriber, please skip ahead about 30 seconds. But if you are a subscriber to my channel, I'd like to give you a big double hello. Okay, I'm going to do that again. I'd like to give you a big double hello. Yeah, there you go. That was because my speaker was turned off. Lovely. That was a brilliant way to introduce my new soundboard. Yeah. Anyway, if you're a subscriber to the channel, I'd like to give you a big double hello, as just said. Hey, thank you very much. You know, liking, subscribing, comment really helps the channel. I have another channel called Full Scale Wargaming. I have a Patreon. I have a blah, blah, blah. The patrons... Oh man, I really wish I hadn't messed up that soundboard introduction there, if I'm honest. Because the soundboard that I got was only eligible to be purchased thanks to my patrons. We have other delights on this soundboard as well. For example, at times when I stop talking, I might play...
Do you hear the voices too?
Yep, and if we ever need to complain about GW, not that we ever do, obviously, we might look to Dawn of War and the Archon when he says...
Death is my meat, terror my wine.
Terror my wine, because we're whining. Does that... Sometimes we like to complain about the cost of 40k as well, in which case we might look to Warcraft.
This warhammer costs 40k.
Yes. Truly, we've reached the pinnacle of soundboard technology. Although, if you do happen to know from Dawn of War, perhaps a phrase where somebody is saying, for the Emperor's glory, and then, like, if you could give me a timestamp for another person saying, whole, that would be pretty cool. Drop a comment. Anyway, let's get on with the stuff. So, Ballistic Skill 4, this is nice and easy to sum up. Scions have Ballistic Skill 3. Like, 50-50 rolls don't feel elite. Like, what? That's not an elite team. But also, because we have already seen Scions with the 3-up, it just feels weird. Yeah. Elite, their ability. So this is the ability to modify a single dice roll by as many elite points, changes to the face going upwards as you have. It's a really cool idea in theory, if it had been used alongside BS3. As it is, it seems like it's almost a mechanical band-aid for BS4. But it's not good enough to aid that band. Lovely bit of wordplay in my typing there. It's also a painfully ironic name, due to obvious reasons. But then also, it doesn't actually help with a fluffed roll, it just tweaks a good one. If you actually just wipe yourself out and just like roll all ones, then it's like, well, there's no point even attempting the elite roll. Elite roll just lets you help one dice. Almost, what's the point? I'm not against elite as an ability. I think it's okay. I know some people have said that they don't like bookkeeping. You know, it's another number you have to track. I don't have any issues with that, as it's only up to 10, you know, or well, sorry, what is it, up to like 18 potentially. I'm okay with that. That's just a d20 dice you need to have by your table. That's okay. But I do understand that some people don't like it, which is fair enough. I'm okay with it, but not in its current iteration. 7 wounds. Okay, so thematically, I'm actually okay with this. The only reason that I think they should be 8 wounds is because Sans were 8 wounds. But I would say that I'm okay with it because, for example, I get that we want them to be tougher than a vet guardsman, right? Because they're the Kasrkin. But I'm pretty sure that also a, what do they call it, a Gene Stealer Cultist Neophyte would be tougher than a vet guard, but they're also 7 wounds. So it's like, when you're talking about the differentials between normal humans, and even then to slightly modified by alien Xenos infection, who are probably significantly tougher than a standard guardsman, they're still 7 wounds. So it's kind of like, well, okay, fine. Also, I don't think that them going to 8 wounds would have a huge effect, but it would against certain armies, obviously, so it is a thing. But I would say it would more just be a statement of their eliteness rather than a real buff to their power. They are, you know, talking about their genericness, they are the 4th normal human team. And they haven't, it almost seems like they haven't learned anything from it, you know? They're competing alongside Vetguard, Breachers, and Blooded. But I feel like the worst aspects of all the others rolled into one. I truly believe you can be generic but still stand out and be fun. I feel like Vetguard are the generic human team. Okay? Breachers are then the modification of Vetguard, but... no, sorry. Vetguard are the standard human team but with numbers. Okay? Breachers are the standard human team but modified to be a little bit tankier. Blooded are the standard human team but modified to be close combat. And Kasrkin are the standard human team but modified to be ranged. Except Vetguard are already a ranged team. And because you haven't increased their BS, and Elite doesn't have that much of an effect, you kind of just feel like a less numerous Vetguard. So it's a little bit of a fail there. I actually don't have an issue, as I've said in my Kasrkin rules video, I actually don't really have that much of an issue with the idea of the standard human team, the standard Imperial human team, being comms, recon, auspex, blah, blah, blah. I actually think there's a little bit of a benefit to that in a team. I think it's good to know that if you're bouncing between these 3, 4, 5 teams, however many it ends up being, they all run around the same core. It's kind of cool. I'm okay with that. Unfortunately, it seems like with the Kasrkin, they didn't do anything to really advance what they could have done, advance the mechanics, or really push the theme, the faction fantasy, if you will, which of course we get onto a little bit later. But right now it's mechanics over fluff. So, unfortunately, this is a good thing, despite this whole video kind of being about they don't feel fluff. We do have to agree that, ultimately, probably don't want the game to be broken just so that the team feels right. Although there could have been different ways they did it, but fluff does have to be retained though, right? Lowering of the ballistic skill seems like a law-betraying concession to mechanics. It just feels like I would have rather they removed a model than gave us 10 models but BS4, right? That's all. Like, I'm not married to the idea of a 10-man Kasrkin team. In a similar way that Corsairs, they come in a box of 10, but they gave us 9 models. Kasrkin could have come in a box of 10, but they gave us 9 models. Of course, then we would have to look at the differences between Kasrkin and Corsairs, and which one we think is better there. I'm just saying, changing them to a 4-up just seems like a mistake when it comes to the fluff of the team. Which of course brings us to the faction fantasy. Every team gets designed with a fantasy in mind, as I already discussed at the beginning. This really does have to be realised. Difficult AF, and of course I've already told you that means as foretold in the prophecy, when given so few levers to pull. Talking of levers to pull. Very roughly, that's right, we've accidentally segued into some sort of just screw Kasrkin, this is full on kill team design space. It seems like within the design space of kill team we are limited to a few things. One of them is the D6. This seems to be a GW wide thing. They do not want to go away from a D6. Fair enough. We in kill team have been granted access to dice pools in this edition, which is really nice. Big step up from rolling single D6s. However, they have gone with a specific type of pool. For example, before we knew what pool types we were using, there was the possibility that you would simply be adding a number of dice to a pool and then facing off, doing face-off rolls. So you wouldn't have cumulative effects, you would have simple pass-fail checks. We've gone with cumulative pools. There's also a time frame that the game must be completed in. We also, of course, as always, are bound by the models that we are given and told that we have to be given. I suspect the rules writers would agree. Also, a little bit, one that people possibly don't think about too much, but it seems that GW as a game company has a rule that you cannot move enemy models. I don't know why. This seems like a huge limitation and a real shame. Yeah. Sorry, I can imagine many reasons why, but it's just a shame. That's all I'm saying. The ability to move enemy models is very cool. Okay. Back to the faction fantasy. The Kasrkin fantasy is being elite, hence the use of the ability term or name elite. It's a well-named skill. They are the best of the best. Kasrkin are, this is as close to, it's not actually a quote, but it basically is, are the pinnacle of unaugmented human limits. Mechanically, this is shown by accuracy in the elite skill. I would argue that there are many other ways to put across the idea that this is an elite team, right? I don't think it just has to be, I can make sure one of my bullets hit. There are other ways you could have done this. However, this is the way that they chose to show it, through accuracy. But of course, as discussed, they decided that the way to prove, and this is the only faction fantasy the faction has, they decided that we are going to show they are an elite team, show their faction fantasy is elitism by allowing them to hit things with one dice whilst lowering the chance to hit with everything else they shoot. I was like, Again, the reason for this is almost certainly because of a mechanics over fluff design philosophy, which is a good thing, but I really feel that something else should have been done in place of that. I would have rather lost one, maybe even two people before going to a 4-up ballistic skill. Or, you know, the alternative actually is just allow them to come out slightly upper in the tier lists, right? I mean, GW doesn't seem to be nerfing Pathfinders or Void Dancers into submission or into the place they need to be, so they are clearly okay with some teams being better than others. Why not allow the new Kasrkin team, a team that is going to be very highly wanted and sought after by the community, to be one of those good teams? So, when looking at teams, I've decided, from what I've seen, that the ability that a faction gets is their kind of innate trait and that defines the team, and it's something that they just do by being them. It's something just built into the DNA. However, ploys are things that they stretch to do, but are possible for them. That's roughly how it feels. For example, the elite ability for the Kasrkin is the idea that they are just so good at shooting, they don't even need to think about being able to hit with that first shot. Right? Makes sense. They're very accurate. But some of their ploys are, you know, the ability to do your little dash within a little area, like that's a very cool ability. I do like that sort of thing. But that's like something they need to be ordered to do, and it's a stretch for them to do because they're having to act super fast. Again, I'm talking about the idea of fluff, how the mechanics are working in the fluff here. That's something that is going to cost you a CP in the mechanics, because in the fluff they're being pushed to make that extra little dash to a safe space or whatever. Cool. So that's roughly how, in my head, I interpret an ability versus a ploy. Good examples of this. So these are just good examples, not specifically of abilities and ploys, but of just good examples of fluff interacting with mechanics. So for the Vet Guard, I think the support assets are really, really cool. I think they perfectly show off what not just veteran guardsmen, but Krieg specifically, should be about. You get that real feeling of they're not really the best guys, but they're the guys that you take because because they're the guys that operational command for the Astra Militarum has available to them. And yeah, I think support assets are really cool. It's a real shame that support assets never get used, obviously, because they're just 100% the worst choice. Out of, support asset versus 4 other troops. I think that needs to be changed in a balanced data slate, but whatever. We then get to breaches. So I think the breaches are filled with good fluff built into their mechanics. I really like the ability to get GA2 in a lot of places, and I like how a lot of their stuff works with, not forcing them, that's the wrong word, but encouraging them to play together, both in their ploys and in their tac ops and in their ability and in their natural on datasheet abilities as well. I think it was a really well thought out team. Corsair get fleet, which is obviously just, it's just a good way of showing that, look, this team isn't APL3, because APL3 denotes something very special. However, they're pretty damn close to it, and to signify that, their ability is they're just really fast because they all get a free dash. I actually think that's a really good example of where mechanics and fluff bend together. And then a little bit of an aside there, intercession, as I was talking about how generic the Kasrkin are maybe, and how actually I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think that the intercession team are so generic, but it's great. They can be anything you want. Obviously, they were designed that way because you might want to run them as Black Templars or Ultramarines or whatever. However you choose to run them, you can do that, and I think that's really good. But they're so generic, they could be anything. If you like Tau stealth suits, those are on 32mm bases. You buy 1 box of 3, those are 3 of your guys with just bolt guns. You buy another 3, give one of them a knife or some sort of, what would a Tau have? A phase blade? I don't know. And that's one of your assault intercessors. This could be Gene Stealers. It could be anything. It's so generic. It's so generic, super generic, that it could be anything you wanted. Very genuinely, you could put your Kasrkin on 32mm bases and play them as an intercession team. Nobody would have any problems. It would be fine. Because, yeah, be awesome. So that is another way to look at how fluff and mechanics can be tied together. When people hear generic, people often hear bad, but it does not have to be that way at all. So, we're closing in on it, chaps. We're closing in on it, okay? The faction fantasy. Elite has too many caveats. Because it's not just you can buff your dice. It's you can buff 1 dice and it costs you X. But you can't do anything more than that. But then, at the same time, a 4-up ballistic skill betrays the fantasy of the team. I've already covered that many times. I can't really add anything else. Unfortunately, that's what we say there. Minorly, so does 7 wounds. Again, I personally don't really care about the 7 wounds thing because I think that it tracks from other places. But I do agree that if Scions were 8 wounds, well, Kasrkin should probably be 8 wounds. But then something I haven't mentioned too much about yet, but their other ploys, they're pretty generic. And I don't feel there's much in there that really says we are elite. And I don't think that being elite should just mean being okay at taking one shot. So what are the solutions to that? That's a good question. It's a good question. Okay, so to be clear, I'm not saying that they need all of this. Either for a power level reason, as already mentioned, everything I've said here, nothing here. Everything I've said here, mate. Jesus Christ. Everything I've said here has nothing to do with their power level. I also don't think that even from a fluff perspective, all of these things need to be done. These are just a list of ideas I've had, one or two of which could be picked, and that's it. So the obvious answer is give them a 3-up BS. However, I would say that for whatever reason, GW has clearly decided 3-up BS isn't what they want them to give them. Fine. I think in that case, if that is the case, then actually, there are other ways to express being a good shot rather than just plus in ballistic skill. I think that plus to ballistic skill is the most easy to see and natural and intuitive way to see that a team is good at shooting. But if for some reason that is off the table, another ability would be to auto-retain a hit. Now, I originally wrote auto-retain a crit, but then that seemed insane, so I immediately changed that. You should never auto-retain a crit, unless you've spent a CP to do it once, ever, kind of thing. Elite should go to unrestricted use. I actually think that should be done. I don't think there should be the holding back of elite points. I don't think that, because essentially what you've given us a resource to manage, but then not let us manage it. If we want to go all out and blow all 12 of our starting elite points on getting one good shot with that plasma, let us do that. I suspect that what it will actually end up being used for most of the time is stopping ones from being rolled and getting more getting more average hits rather than big one shots. So I don't think we're going to be doing 4 crits on a plasma. I think we're going to be doing 4 hits on a hellgun more often than not, but who knows? Again, it's resource management. They gave us a resource and then said, but you don't get to really manage it. Lol. Auto-retain hit. Yep. I think that another way to express an elite team... Oh, sorry. I do think the elite unrestricted use should just be part of their team. I think that needs to be changed. Ignore injured. I think that's a really good way to show that a team is an elite team. So, for example, I think that if we're saying that 3-up BS is off the table, taking the team to being elite with unrestricted use and they ignore injured and they had an 8-up, I think that would be more than enough to show that they are an elite team. Ignoring injured is something that GW doesn't give out too often, I will admit, but that's why it kind of shows how elite they are. I put extends to Overwatch there because I would hope that if one were to ignore injured in this instance, it would also allow you to fire Overwatch. Because firing Overwatch, I feel so they have a piece of equipment, I think it's called the foregrip, which allows you to ignore ballistic skill modifier or minus ballistic skill modifiers for Overwatch, including the guard action. And I really like that as a way to show the team is an elite team, but I think it should be baked into their basic elite ability, basically. For that reason, it almost certainly won't happen, because I don't think GW has yet modified a team to the point where they've made a piece of equipment useless. So if they did that change, then that foregrip would no longer have a reason to exist. So I don't think that will realistically happen, but I do think that ignoring injured in general would be a great way to show that they're an elite team. And I also think that ignoring the negatives to ballistic skill in Overwatch is a good way to show that they're an elite team. Then, with just a few random thoughts, I suppose, but double actions, so like for the GA2 shenanigans that the breachers get up to, I think that's really cool. I think I really like them, basically. To show an elite team that works together, I think is a really good mechanic. So some sort of ploy to allow them a double action at some point would be really nice. And then I've put an interrupt ploy. So what I was thinking here was similar to the Kroot Pistolier, who is able to interrupt an enemy shot with his own shot. I think that would be a really good way to show that this team is elite enough to do that kind of ability off of any of their one of their guys. You know, it's still going to cost you a CP. Maybe there has to be a range to it, so only within 6 inches. Maybe, you know, there could be lots of caveats in there about who can use it and when and how many times. Or maybe it's a 2 CP thing, you know, like really expensive. But I think that some sort of interrupt ploy where you get to act before the enemy acts, I think is a really good way of showing that is a very elite thing to do. Obviously, if you were to put that in, you kind of have to look back and consistence-wise kind of think, well, hold on, if they're able to do that, then why can't Corsairs, who are all about speed, do it as well? And it's like, okay, I do understand, you know. That maybe it's not the thing they need, but just as a way to show it's an elite team, it's a cool idea. Okay, and with that done, we are done. Amazing. Wow, that's the end of my Kasrkin video. What shall I say from the soundboard? It's not going to come through yet, is it? Okay, there you go. Right, lovely. Hold on, let's try that again.
Even in death I still serve.
That's right, I'm very sick at the moment. I'm amazed I managed to get through this. About halfway through, I was about to cough. It was going to be real bad. I was going to have to edit the video. Disaster. Anyway, guys, if you made it to the end of the video, I'd like to give you a big triple hello. Wow, isn't that wholesome? Yes, it is. Guys, there's honestly nothing you can do more than watching to the end of a video. It genuinely helps a small channel like mine out. Consider doing it not only to my videos, but to other small YouTube content creators that you like, as it really helps. I guess I have to do the mandatory shilling. I have merch. It's fun. Consider buying some of that if you want. I also have a Patreon where I'm currently giving out objective cards and such, and my objective markers. I don't know why I said objective cards. Data cards, as shown in my previous videos, and objective markers, which are now available for all of my $10 plus patrons. And I have a second channel called Full Scale Wargaming, which is currently on a bit of a sleeper mode, but I'm about to go hard once I finally finish writing some scripts. I also have a Patreon, a Discord, a Facebook, all this other stuff as well. Anyway, guys, what do you think about the Kasrkin? Do you think I was off base here? Do you think other things? I don't know. I'm going to go and have a lie down. Let me know what your thoughts are. Have a good one. Hope this was an enjoyable, incredibly low energy, because I'm sick, video. Bye.